All right, guys. Well, I'm really happy to introduce our next speaker. His name is Bob Ferguson. I have known Bob for a number of years, back when there was discussion forums, if you remember those things, like back in the age of MySpace and um, Zanga. And anyway, so Bob,
Field Herp Forum.
Field Herp Forum. And so Bob was Rick, and so we slowly started to get to know other regional herpers in the area through things, forums and stuff like that. But then Bob's a person that once you meet him in person, you realize this is one of the most dedicated people who just goes out there, puts in the time, and does all the research behind the scenes. And he's just really excellent at everything he does, whether it's photography, whether it's fundraising for conservation, whether it's just being able to look at a Google map and decide that worm snakes must live in this county, even though there's no county record for them. Bob's excellent at all that. He's just a natural, talented wildlife person. So we're really excited to have him share with us. And Bob, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you, and I'll mute myself, and I'll only chime in if I have something very hilarious to say.
All right, thanks, Jesse. Hello, everybody. Just let me figure out how to get my screen shared. This is my first Zoom presentation I've done, so.
Yeah, thank you for letting us be your guinea pigs.
We'll see how it goes. So anyway, thanks, Jesse, for that kind words. Probably a little too kind, but I appreciate it nonetheless. It is an addiction, a passion. I live, breathe, sleep all animals, but herps have always been my number one. Snakes have always been my number one herp. That's what I've always thought about. So a little bit about me real quick. You know what, real quick, let me just jump to this, because I know a few people have to leave early. The calendar, I'm going to make this real quick. I sell these 5 for $90 or $20 a piece shipped to you. That's just the website you can get it, and the coupons to get $5 off for the weekend. So while I tell you about myself, in case you're here for that, just write that down or a screenshot or whatever, but a little bit about myself. As Jesse said, I've been herping. I've always loved herps. When I was a little kid, I liked herps. But as it goes through teenage years, in my early 20s, I was in a band. I kind of wasn't around it so much. And then I found nature again about 16 years ago. And once I fell hard. And it is every minute that I have free, I am out looking for animals, which I'm sure a lot of you do as well. So we're kindred spirits, we can relate here. I am a county coordinator for Pennsylvania's Herp Atlas, which I believe is in year 7 now, maybe 8. I'm a coordinator for Carbon County, but I spend a lot of time herping. I live in Bucks County. My kids live in Lancaster County, so I'm out there at least once every 2 weeks, and trying not to spend too much money with all of my kids in tow. So we're usually outside looking for herps. I've done stuff with the Maryland Herp Atlas, a lot of work with New Jersey. But again, this is all just volunteer stuff. I'm no different than you. I don't get paid for anything. I just love finding snakes at the end of the day. So I don't know, this is kind of weird because I don't have a live audience. I can't really see you guys. And I would usually ask who here has ever been to the Pine Barrens to herp. So, okay, I see some hands. I only have 4 people on the screen, and one of them's me. So hopefully some of you guys have been. And I'm sure, unless you were one of the lucky souls that you got beaten down that day and may have seen a bunch of fence lizards run around and maybe 1 or 2 snakes. I mean, it can be good, but most of the time the Pine Barrens is fickle. And before I want to start going into the species, I just want to read a quick quote from Carl Kaufeld, which you guys may have heard of. He wrote the legendary book, Snakes and Snake Hunting. And this is just the way, if this is me 60 years ago. There is no region I know which holds so much and yields so little as the Barrens, yet repeated failure here serves only to strengthen determination. The true Pine Barrens addict never gives into discouragement or frustration. He is like a gambler who, after repeated losses, still continues to play with the internal hope of striking it rich. One day, the discouraged hunter finds a pine snake and his joy is boundless. This is the shot in the arm he needs to carry him through another 5 or 6 months of fruitless search. No truer words can be spoken about what it's like to herp in the Pine Barrens. It is so hard. I could wax poetic about this all night, and I know we only have a certain amount of time, but that's how it is, and now I'm going to get into the species. So in the Pine Barrens, you have 17 different species. I was kind of figuring out how I wanted to put these in order, and I came up with, I'm going to start with the 3 most common snakes, which I lovingly call the Pine Barrens trifecta, meaning you can go work your butt off for an entire weekend and you may only see these 3 snakes. So first, we're going to start with an eastern worm snake. And please, guys, if you have questions, chime in, because I know we have a mixed crowd here. We have a lot of Lancaster Herp Society, and I have a few people from Facebook signing in. So I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence, but I want to make sure that I'm being broad enough here. So if anybody has any specific questions, please ask. Eastern worm snake.
I have a question. Excuse me. Can you explain exactly what is the Pine Barrens, or where is it?
Okay, the Pine Barrens is in southern New Jersey. It's almost 1 million acres of protected land in the most crowded state in the union. So really, when you go to see 1 million acres of land, they came up with something called the CMP, the Comprehensive Management Plan, that's basically protected 1 million acres. It's like 990,000 acres in southern New Jersey, and it's coastal plain. You have inner and outer, basically sandy soil. You have a mix of habitats. You have cedar swamp, but basically it's characterized by sand, and it holds a very specific fauna and flora. I'm obviously concentrating on the snakes, but it's a very interesting area because you have this spot in New Jersey where the northern species end, some of them, and where the southern affinity species end, and they mix. So you have a very diverse reptile population, and there's a lot of them. And you might think that might contradict with my first statement and my quote that I read. There's a lot of them. It's just not very friendly for the herper. It's not. They're very hard to find. Does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So the eastern worm snake, I see more of the, if I'm out in the Pine Barrens flipping trash, which, you guys over here in Lancaster County, yeah, you might see a board and you flip it, but like you have rocks, you have natural cover. It's a much different game in the Pine Barrens. There are no rocks in the coastal plain. So what do you have to do if you're going to find a lot of these snakes that stay hidden, or fossorial snakes? You have to go flip other people's trash, stuff that contractors, I'm not picking on contractors, but contractors that have dumped shingles in the Pine Barrens, dumped siding, dumped wood, dumped concrete, whatever. So when I go to flip things in the Pine Barrens, the eastern worm snake is the one I see the most. If you don't know what a worm snake looks like, it's about 12 inches long. That's one I flipped under a log. And I tried to include some in-hand shots here so I can kind of give you an idea on the size of everything. They're harmless snakes. The worst they will do is poop all over you. I'm not even sure they musk too bad. It's just they defecate on you to let them go. They will, if you pick one up, they will try and burrow into your hand. That's what they do. Their snouts are made for burrowing, and they live underground most of the time. Why? Eating worms and looking like worms. I'm assuming that's how they got their name. But another cool thing about them is they have very pointy, sharp tails. They won't break skin, but if you're not like a herp nerd like me, handling 100 a year or whatever, and you pick one up for the first time, you might feel that sharp tail prick you, and it might startle you. So I guess that works on predators too. So that is the eastern worm snake. That is part 1 of the Pine Barrens trifecta. Part 2, one that everybody is probably familiar with if you flipped a rock in Pennsylvania, the ringneck snake. I say ringneck snake here because in Jersey and even in parts of Pennsylvania, you have an intergrade zone where the northern and southern species mix, subspecies mix. So these are, ringneck snakes is a full species, but you have northerns and southerns as subspecies. So the Southerns almost always have a broken ring around their neck, whereas Northerns do not. This was a snake I happened to find that was shedding under a rock as I flipped it. So I've made a cool picture, but you can see, I'm pointing to my screen like you can see me. You can see the full ring.
Wow.
Northerns have pure yellow bellies, whereas Southerns have what we call belly dots or half moons. Now, in the Pine Barrens, this is usually how you will find them. I've never seen a ringneck in the Pine Barrens without the belly dots. I have seen a few with full rings. Now you come to Pennsylvania side, you're going to see in the southern part of Pennsylvania, you're going to see a pretty mixed characteristics between the two. It's because we're in an intergrade zone. So I tend to say we have southern ringnecks in the Pine Barrens because they usually carry both traits, but it's truly an intergrade zone. Now, what do ringnecks do to protect themselves? I feel like they are one of the worst muskers we have. Now, I have a theory on that. Maybe it's because they're so small, but then it wouldn't carry weight with the worm snake. But their musk stinks, unless, of course, you love snakes as much as me, and I take it all in. It's like it's my driving force. So I have a bunch of other small snakes that I wanted to group in here, but staying true to the Pine Barrens trifecta theme, we're going to jump right into what I would call one of the two most defensive snakes, not meanest. You can use mean if you want, but I try to be careful with my words, but the most defensive snakes. Black racer. I see these, it's probably a three-way tie between the worm snake, ringneck, and racer. And yeah, we can be politically correct and we can say, oh, racers are generalists and they're so successful and they're so super smart. And if you see one hunting during the day with its head periscope, and you can just see how it's looking across the field, just, you can show your love for these animals. But when you're in the Pine Barrens to find Pine Barren specialties, and you are covered in ticks and covered in chiggers and ripped up from thorns and musked on by 20 worm and ringneck snakes, these three snakes are the last thing you want to see. I love them to death, but in the Pine Barrens, they are the trifecta. That is what you can expect out of a day. While we're on big black snakes, I'm going to compare rat snakes to these. I'm sure a lot of you know the differences, so bear with me, but a lot of people have no idea. So here's my own personal lesson on racers versus rat snakes. So we have an eastern rat snake. That's the new common name. I still call them black rats. Common names are common names. They can differ from anywhere you go, from city to city. So that's your black rat snake. How do you tell them apart? This is one of the way I tell what I would call normies, meaning you don't have dreams about snakes 2 out of 3 nights. This is how I would tell you I tell them apart. When you look at a racer, it almost has a sinister look, right? It's got a pointier snout. It has that raised keel eyebrow, like it's almost sneering, right? Whereas rat snakes look like the cuter version. They look like a puppy dog. They don't have that raised eyebrow. They have big round eyes. So once again, just like compare the two. Sinister, cute. I don't mean to generalize black racers, but it kind of fits. If you pick up a rat snake, this is me and my daughter when, oh man, I don't even know how old she was, maybe 3, with a rat snake. I have a pretty good idea of how rat snakes are going to work. If you pick up a rat snake, I tell people it might bite you. I've had a lot of experience handling these things, so I can usually tell their demeanor or how they're going to act. That said, snakes do what they want, and I've had a perfectly chilled out black rat bite me 10 minutes later for no reason. But for the main part, you pick up a black rat that's not already startled or defensive, and you're pretty good. Even defensive snakes you can pick up and they chill out. This is how racers usually act. This is actually a picture my daughter took of me with my camera as I'm looking down at the racer. That's her chipmunk in my back pocket, not mine, I promise. That's how racers act. They are one of the top two most offensive snakes. That's what they do. That said, if you give a snake room to flee, that's always its first choice. If a snake feels like it's not outrunning you, it might turn around and coil up. Like this guy had plenty of room to escape, but I guess I came up on him quick enough that he felt like he couldn't flee in time, and that's what he does. If you pick up a racer, you're probably going to get tagged, probably multiple times. And add insult to injury, they like to crap and musk all over you too, and usually whip their tails around to make sure they're rubbing it into your lacerations. Now, all that said, racers, anything in the Northeast that's not venomous, getting bit is basically a non-event. I mean, I don't actively go out trying to get bit, but that's just, you play the game, sometimes you're going to take the bites. So, but at the end of the day, they have a bunch of really small teeth that are just like 100 pin pricks, and you might bleed a little. It does not hurt. I've seen people freak out and run from snakes, hurting themselves, falling over logs or branches more than they ever would have if they would actually sat there and let a snake bite them when it wasn't going to bite anyway.
Pretty much.
Black rat snakes, when they do get defensive, they do this. This is pretty common in the rat snake genus. It's Pantherophis, or you can pronounce it however you want. They coil back and they'll rattle a tail and they might strike. This is less than 50% with me. And honestly, since if I don't have a fleeing snake, I usually don't pick them up nowadays if I don't have to. But you know, if I'm with somebody new and they want to see it, whatever, if the snake's up fleeing, you can pick it up and it's calm as can be. So this is pretty rare. This is a startled snake feeling like it has to defend itself against a predator. Here's another one looking all goofy that I kind of snuck up on in a tree. Black rats are, whereas racers are what you can call terrestrial. They can climb, but they're usually on the ground, hunting or basking in the sun. Black rat snakes are, why is the word skipping my mind? Jesse, you want to help me? When they climb, arboreal. Black rat snakes are arboreal, so they are found in the trees a lot. Black rat snakes actually are big bird eaters, whereas racers are definitely more generalist and will take down whatever they can catch and overpower. Anything from frogs to rodents to snakes to baby turtles, whatever they find, they will eat. Racers tend to, or rat snakes tend to like rodents and eat a lot of birds. And I even have a friend who found one eating a bat in the Poconos one time. So I don't count them out for anything.
Bob, have you ever found a racer in a tree?
I have not, but I've had racers flee from me up a tree and actually go as high up as like 25 feet and just hang out like it was a rat snake. So they're definitely capable. I just don't think that fits into their natural history normally.
And then could you tell me if this is correct? My understanding is that rat snakes are constrictors. I know that, but I've heard racers are not constrictors, that they basically grab their stuff and bludgeon it on the wall, similar to an indigo or something. Is that true, guys?
That's the way I know it. The rat snakes will wrap their prey. Racers just kind of overpower it. They'll push it into the ground. They'll push it up against a tree, whatever they got to do. I've never heard about a racer smacking something against the wall, but I wouldn't put it past them. They are really smart snakes.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of a tegu that smacks things against the wall, but it's like same mentality.
Let's put it this way. I wouldn't be surprised if a video surfaced.
Right.
So I wanted to show, all right, so I'm showing the belly of the rat snake. Now, normally, let me go back to this one. See this, the belly is very mottled. Usually rat snakes will have more black mottling, whereas racers, and I don't expect you to flip snakes over if you're not comfortable with them, they're usually this gray, opaque looking belly. That's one more difference. And then before we move on from the two big black snakes, I want to discuss the juvenile versions. They're very hard to tell apart if you don't think about this constantly like I do. So that's very understandable. I can just tell them, I don't think about keys or characteristics. So I have a really hard time telling somebody, you know, you need to look for this or this or this. I just kind of know on sight. I will say, if you look at these two, this is a racer. That's a rat snake. You can see they both have patterns that disappear as they get older. Racers, I just kind of say, because they can be a little bit different color. Racers have a lot more blotches and a lot less lighter colors, whereas rat snakes are definitely more contrasty, and the blotches down their back are far less than the racers. And I know there is, you know, if you look into a field guide, they're going to give you a blotch count range for each. I don't know it off the top of my head. I just know what they look like when I see them.
Yeah.
So I apologize for that.
Could you go back to that racer picture? Because that's a great picture to see the size of the puppy dog eyes. So these juvenile racers have eyes that are like half of their head. And so if you look at that picture of the racer with like eyes a half of their head, and actually I have a puppy dog right here. I'll hold it up. So you can see, it looks just like, if you can see my picture, it looks just like puppy dog eyes in a way.
But Bob, your description about telling the adult ones apart, wasn't it that the black rat snake looks more like a puppy dog?
Yes.
Yeah, but this juvenile picture here, this is a racer, right? With the big
Right.
Oh, right.
Their
affectionate
eyes are definitely bigger.
Yeah.
Proportion wise as a baby. You can see the rat. It's not the
Yeah.
best shot for showing it. All right, I will move on if nobody has questions on this. I know these are common snakes. So I'm going to go back to the smaller snakes. We're going to get
one quick question. Would you put the black racer as part of the trifecta, or would you say also the black rat snake is in there too, or no?
No, definitely the racer. I see.
Okay.
I can see 17 racers in a day. I have seen 17 racers in a day in the Pine Barrens. I've never seen more than 2 rats in the Pine Barrens in a day. And racers are throughout the entire state. So they're found all throughout the Barrens. The rat snakes, I've seen them in the core Barrens, but really they kind of seem like they do better on the fringes. And I know I'm not, I have no scientific way. I can only go off of my experience, but by talking to other people, that seems to be the way it is. When you get in the more fringy areas of the Pine Barrens, like maybe like Cape May, down in that peninsula, there's tons of rats. Still a lot more racers, but a lot more rats on the outskirts.
Okay.
So we're going to move back into the fossorials. We have northern red bellies. We have these in Pennsylvania as well. This is a snake that I personally flip a lot more under trash than I see out. That said, in the last few years, I started running, right? And I do some long distance stuff. So instead of just like going to the Pine Barrens to Herp, I started running, and I mean long distances. Like, you know, I ran a few marathons. I'm not tooting my horn, just trying to tell you, like, I've spent miles and miles in habitat pretty regularly. And I started finding things like a red-bellied snake out on the crawl. I never saw that before I started running. I would always flip them. So I used to think that they were only found by flipping or fossorial snakes, but maybe I was mistaken, because I find a lot now when I'm out just on the crawl, and it still surprises me. Obviously, they get that name from the red belly. These guys are only about, the adults maybe get to 14 inches. They have a lot of different color variety. This is actually a pretty dull one. I'm kind of don't know why I even included that. They get a lot better looking than that. I got like these cinnamon phases, and really being this small at like the large adult, they do not get the appreciation they deserve. A good friend of mine, actually, he kind of mentored me when I first found field herp form, which was kind of like the catalyst for me really going head first into herping. He always said, you know, if red bellies were 3.5 feet long, like a milk snake, everybody would love them in the pet trade. And I believe that to be true, because when you can put a macro lens on the face like this, there's so much intricate detail. And I think like really this might be what separates my sickness from a lot of people's. Is some people might like want to go out and find snakes. I want to take these pictures because I will stare at that and just like it's not normal. But that said, I get to notice a lot of these little details. Like that face looks like marble. Like everybody says, oh, red belly, let me see the red belly. But there's a lot more to them than that.
Bob, could I ask you a question? When you have that up close of a picture of the face, how close are you to that snake? Kind of a photography question, because I don't shoot macro lens very often.
With my 100mm macro, it's probably like 12 inches.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
cool. That's a great
Yeah,
picture.
you can get too close and it won't focus, so
Right.
you have to back up somewhat. But yeah, it's a great lens if anybody's looking for a lens. If you got Canon's 100mm, you got Nikon the 105mm. They're the best lenses out there, no matter which side of the fence you sit on in the camera wars. Another version of the red belly, they obviously aren't found like this. That said, it's debatable, but a lot of scientists think that the reason for that red belly is if a predator finds them, they will flip it up as like a warning sign.
Ooh.
I would think a snake would see me as a predator. They usually do. And I've never seen it, so I don't know. That's posed by me. And like I said, very variable. They are called red bellies. Throw out that ring neck there. That was just a picture I took for the different colors. But if you look at that, the red and the orange are perfect or totally different colors. And I found peach, I found pink, I found deeper red, lighter red. I found all shades in between. That's why I really enjoy finding these snakes, which in the mountains of Pennsylvania, you can find a dozen in 2 hours if you time it right. And the Pine Barrens are a little tougher, but I always look forward to them because you never know what you're going to get. If you look closely on those snakes, you'll see like the silvery specks that like kind of like line the red bellies. Sometimes that's there, sometimes that's missing. You just never know what you're going to get with these snakes. The next, the sister species of the snake is the northern brown snake, or Decay's brown. Again, this is a very common snake in Pennsylvania. I'm sure you guys have seen this. These guys do very well around people's houses. They're slug eaters. That's probably why they probably den in foundations like Jesse's garter snakes. My accountant lives in a row home in Philadelphia, and maybe every other year, I'll get a picture on like a 60-degree January day of a brown snake literally sitting on her front step basking. And that just is wild to me. They just do so well around human habitation. Flipped a ton in trash. There's one place I can go and I can flip 25 of these if it's May. So that shows you the difference there. The brown is on top. Browns, while I will say they're variable, they're not nearly as variable as the red bellies. The bellies always look the same. I should have a picture in here, but the tops can look different. Like that's a little bit more of like a striped look. Whereas this one I found actually in Lancaster County is a very checkered looking one. And I promise you, these are all Pine Barrens species. So, but that one was found in Lancaster. I wanted to show the variety. And I actually came across brown snakes mating in the leaves one day. And I thought that was pretty wild. So I just wanted to include that. Here's the belly, as you can see, not nearly as cool as a red belly, but to be appreciated for sure. Both snakes, like I said, are slug eaters. They're both fossorial. I did have one time this year. I had to go to a doctor's appointment. I had time, I like 10 minutes to wait. So I'm like, let me check out this park. I've never been here. Let me check out this park, see if I can run. I had to run a few miles after the doctor's appointment. So I just wanted to check it out. And there was like a brown snake exodus. I usually think of these guys as being flipped under rocks. On this one road, I got 11 brown snakes in 10 minutes, all moving across the road at the same time. It was wild. So there's always stuff to learn about these guys. And that just really impressed me. I was saying these guys are pretty variable. This is a really crappy picture, but I wanted to kind of give you guys my regrets, because if you see that one to the right, that is a really stunning brown snake. It's also almost like a really deep red brown. And unfortunately, I probably had milk snakes on the mind that day and just took a quick voucher picture, and that guy didn't get his day in the sun. One more before we go on. This snake, the last time it was found in the Pine Barrens was 1992, and that is actually debatable. There's not a picture for it. Smooth earth snakes, these are also very rare in Pennsylvania. You can see the differences on this one. It has like, it kind of looks scattered, but it usually has 2 rows of black dots down the back. Another small snake again. Like I said, there's only been a handful found in New Jersey, the whole state ever. I think like 6 or 7. A few of them were above the Pine Barrens, like 2 or 3 in the Pine Barrens. I'm going to be the next one. I've just marked my words. I said it here. I'm going to find the next Squealer in New Jersey. Now, these guys are also, like I said, endangered in Pennsylvania. And there was a big gap where they weren't found since, I feel like it was 1962. In Pennsylvania, a friend of mine found a DOR, and me and Kyle Locks, which I'm sure a lot of you might know the name, went one day after a bog turtle survey and flipped the first live one in over 50 years in Pennsylvania. It was pretty wild. I'd like to say I flipped it. I didn't. I rode Kyle's coattails on that one. But since then, I've actually found a lot of Squealers in Pennsylvania. I apologize. I know this is a Pine Barrens talk, but it's a really cool little species that like has just flown under the radar for so long. And I'm sure it's flying under the radar somewhere in New Jersey because the right person, meaning someone in the know, isn't looking for it. So that's a project of mine coming up. I feel like that's the last snake I actually need to find in the Pine Barrens. Whether it's there or not still, who knows? Next, we're going to move on to snakes that I find around water. So another common one you guys all know, northern water snake. Find these by creeks, by ponds, by vernal pools, on the roads at night, traveling across the park grass to the next stream over. They're ubiquitous. Great snakes, frog eaters, fish eaters. They can take down stuff that's a lot bigger than them. I've seen some pictures. I've never had the fortune of seeing it myself. I've seen them feasting on toads and green frogs a bunch. This is the second snake that I would call the most defensive. You pick one of these up, you pick a racer up. If you don't know what you're doing, and even when you know what you're doing, you're probably going to get bit 95% of the time, and probably multiple times. The difference with water snakes is, and this sounds sensational, it's not meant to be, but they have a bit of an anticoagulant in their saliva that causes you to bleed a little more. So on top of that, you have the anticoagulant and you usually have water involved, and it looks like a murder scene if something latches on your arm. You just got blood everywhere. That said, when all's said and done, you let the snake go, you're going to smell bad, you're going to clean off, and you're going to have like little pinpricks that you can't even see. It's a big show. And they've done their job. You haven't eaten them, and they're going to live to hunt fish and frogs another day. As you can see, they come out of the womb ready to fire. Doesn't hurt at all. It's something you got to deal with if you're going to handle them. And usually I don't handle them unless, like I said, I'm showing it off to somebody. The bellies are really nice on them. I'll show you some belly shots in a minute. Or if I need to grab one for a voucher for the Pennsylvania Herp Atlas that I put a lot of data into the database for.
Hey, Bob, question about water snakes came in on the chat from Harvey. He
Okay.
mentioned that water snakes in the Barrens are the best looking water snakes he has seen, and they have so much red. What do you think about that?
I agree wholeheartedly. I have a pretty poor shot, actually. And you know what? That was like my next point. This is what I would call a typical water snake. And they can look like this in the Barrens too. But like this is basically what you're going to see in Pennsylvania around you guys. In the Barrens, and this is an old grungy adult that's actually in shed. You can see that red. This snake was probably 3 feet long and pretty girthy, and it has that red on it that just, I really wish I had a better photo, but like it's really brilliant. And that's what I do see a lot in the Pine Barrens. I guess Harvey's come across that as well. So yeah, they're really good looking snakes in the Pine Barrens.
I got to put a little PA pride in here. I've actually found some really bright, like the red like that too, in Berks County as well. So I think it's just a matter of that regionally, they have some really nice colors to them. But generally, yeah, the northern waters are pretty bland, but there are some beautiful animals out there.
Could I ask this question while a couple of you smart people are on here? Do you think the really grungy looking snakes water snakes that we see, do you think they were once beautiful and they've been more or less lost their colors because they live in water so long they get stained like yellow teeth from coffee? Or do you think it's genetics, or probably a combination?
I think it's genetics.
Yeah.
I do see stuff that comes out of like bogs and fens.
Yeah.
And after they come out of rumation, like they will definitely carry them, and garter snakes. They'll definitely be like, they'll be colored like iron, like, you know, a dirty, rusty look, but that all comes off eventually.
But
yeah,
I mean,
they shed, they're going to lose all that basically.
one of the reasons I asked that is you look at alligator hatchlings and they're all beautiful. And then you look at alligators once they're over 10 feet, they're like this grayish, grungish kind of color from being old in the water their whole lives. I didn't know if you thought that had an effect with water snakes.
I do think the younger ones are generally way better looking, and they do fade out. But I think if they're going to carry that red, they're going to show it forever.
You know, and Jordan Allen just tuned in. He said he sees a lot of dirt brown neos in Pennsylvania, neos being neonates babies, for those who don't know. So that's a good comment from Jordan, that he's seeing, what he's saying is even as babies that haven't spent years in the water, sometimes they're still kind of dirt brown in Pennsylvania. So that's a good answer, that water snakes in the Barrens are some better looking genetics. I think we can say it's one reason to get bitten by a snake in New Jersey as opposed to Pennsylvania.
Yeah, honestly, Bob, I'm curious, with seeing neonate water snakes, have you seen neonates that have the brighter red on them? Because all the neonates I've seen have been pretty bland looking.
I have. It's not very common. That said, I mean, all honestly, I'm not out looking for water snakes. I just kind of come across them. If I wanted to target them for a few weekends, I'm sure I would find a few red ones. Okay. At least in the Poconos or something.
Right.
And while we're actually on somebody said PA pride. I want you all to know I live in Pennsylvania. I love the Pine Barrens. This isn't like I'm not crapping on Pennsylvania at all. I love Pennsylvania. I'm Pennsylvania Herp coordinator. I love the Poconos. The way my life goes is my wife allows me one day a weekend to get out, right? She's great that way. 1 week I'll go to the Pine Barrens, the next I go to the Poconos. I'm back and forth. I love those two habitats. So don't get me wrong, I love Pennsylvania. Here's the belly of a smaller one. I don't have a picture in the slides here, but I feel like this was like a juvenile that had a lot of red on it. I'd have to go back and look. Now, one thing for people who don't know is you always have your uncle's story about water moccasins or cottonmouths, and that's no different in Pennsylvania or the Pine Barrens. Everybody has seen a water moccasin that doesn't know any better. No matter what anybody tells you, there are no venomous water snakes in the Pine Barrens or Pennsylvania for that matter. I know a lot of you know this, I apologize. People they hear things and these myths just get worse and worse, and it's like a whisper down the lane, and it snowballs into this fear that we all know and we all encounter every day. And then I don't even think that people are maliciously lying about water moccasins anymore. I just think that they believe it because they've heard it so much or they've told it so much. So, you know, I like to try and dispel some of that. I know for most of you guys I don't have to, but I did this slideshow for a wildlife refuge a month ago, so I wanted to make sure I was speaking to people who had just had a general interest in this. So as you can see, one of the ways people mistake these for venomous snakes is because venomous snakes have big triangular heads. Well, when a water snake pulls back, like it is in this top-down picture, you can see its jaws spreading out. And to somebody who doesn't know any better, okay, I can see the mistake there. Oh, there's a water moccasin, it's cottonmouth. You know, I've included some cottonmouth pictures here to show the differences. That is a triangular head. You can see it. It's very sharp on the edges as compared to this, it's very rounded. Here's a side shot of a cottonmouth I came across down in Florida. You can see very pointy. You see the elliptical pupils, which in our area, in the Pine Barrens, there's only one venomous snake, and it's going to have elliptical pupils. And if you're close enough to see the pupils, anything round will not harm you, detriment or other than a bite or getting musked on. So that's what you want to look for. Other than that, cottonmouths, a water snake is going to bite you repeatedly, like I had said. A cottonmouth, I wouldn't test fate, will not. A cottonmouth will stand its ground, show you its white mouth, go away. I've seen some pretty, trying to pick my words carefully. I've seen some people, against my own advisement, not in front of me, but I would never say to do this, actually scoop under cottonmouths and pick them up, and they would stay in that position that you're seeing on the slide right now. They don't want to bite. That their defense is to show you their mouth. They think it's scary. They think you're going to go away. The fangs are there for eating. The venom is there for eating, and that's just a closer shot of the white mouth, and hopefully you can see the sheath holding in the fangs there.
Bob, there's a question from Ben. He said, aren't the lip bars a good method to distinguish them?
The what?
The lip bars.
That is too smart for me. I do not know. Let me see.
I was hoping you would know so I could pretend as a president that I didn't have to know.
I don't really know. One of my problems that I definitely need to get better at is I don't know traits like that in everything. I know a cottonmouth when I see one, you know. So I'm not the good high school biology teacher.
Right. No, I know what you mean. So yeah, while we're on some of the comments, Ben also chimed in. He's from Mercer, New Jersey, and he said most of the water snakes he had seen are highly have the red. And Harvey shared a picture with us of a really beautiful water snake from the Barrens with lots of red. So that's kind of a neat, consistent theme we're seeing here, is that the water snakes seem to have that that regional pattern of high reds in the Barrens.
Yeah, they're nice looking. You got anything else right now, or?
Josh Ems is saying we get people saying they see cottonmouths here in New Mexico.
Hey, Josh, glad you're here.
Yeah, I thought it was kind of funny. When I was down in Florida, everything was a cottonmouth. Now, being here in Pennsylvania, everything people see is a copperhead. So I just think it's funny. Everywhere you go, like these same rumors that people have about what they see, they just take on a different regional dialect. Sort of like when I was up in Wyoming, the story was that the bull snakes and the rattlesnakes were crossbreeding. Just like here in Pennsylvania, the story is that the copperheads and the rat snakes are crossbreeding. But in both cases, you have egg layers and live bearers that cannot possibly crossbreed. And yet everywhere you go, people have different versions of these same rumors that just are not true.
Yeah, it's wild. It really is. I find I've surrounded myself with nature lovers and snake enthusiasts for so long that I tend to forget that 99% of the population knows nothing about snakes, either hates them or fears them. You know, it's eye-opening at times, but most of the time I'm in la la land with all you guys. You know, we're just a different breed, really.
Yeah.
It's my last picture. That's cottonmouth. As you can see, my kids would kill me if they knew I included this picture. This is probably like 8 years ago. Snakes do not chase you. I hear that all the time about every snake, especially cottonmouths or water moccasins, as people like to call them. That's what they do. They sit there with their mouth open, and we had to scoot it off the road so that the next car didn't run it over, probably on purpose. So that was my little spiel on the cottonmouths. I like to add a few pictures of things that people do mix up and, you know, try to get them thinking a little bit more about it. Next, I'm going to move on to the Thamnophis genus.
Hey, could I ask you one more question before you do? Just to confirm, where do copperheads start to occur here, coming from north? Is around Southern Virginia is the first place they occur?
Oh, cottonmouths. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. If you look at any range maps, cottonmouths if you're heading down Route 13 and you go over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, there are cottonmouths in the first state park as soon as you get over that bridge.
And that's in Virginia, right?
Yes, they're not on the Delmarva Peninsula though, so that the break in the bay there has limited them over their lifespan. They will move up into central Virginia, not central, like southern central Virginia. Can't think of it. It doesn't matter. The county's slipping my mind, but it's not very far into Virginia. So unless you're deep into Virginia, you're not going to see a water moccasin.
So they're not in Jersey, they're not Maryland. I just wanted to sort of drive that point home.
They are definitely not. If you're walking in the Pine Barrens, you have a few hundred miles before you run into a cottonmouth. So
thank you.
All right, Thamnophis. The difference here in the Pine Barrens, anywhere you go in Pennsylvania, you're going to find garter snakes. There are, other than ringnecks and maybe water snakes, they're probably our most common species. They might be the most common. That's different in the Pine Barrens. The Pine Barrens holds a lot more ribbon snakes. You do come across garters, but if you're going to see one or the other of the genus, it's going to be a ribbon snake. Ribbon snakes are a lot more slender than garters. This is the largest one I've ever found. I actually flipped this under tin, hoping it was a king snake, but that was fine with me. This is great bycatch because this was a gorgeous, large ribbon snake. So that's really the top end of their size. One of the ways to tell a ribbon from a garter, if you look at the face here, you look in front of the eye, you're going to see a very clean white or pale yellow spot along the eye. Garters, they can have that, but it's not as defined. And I should have some samples for you here. Another thing while you're looking at this ribbon snake is right below the eye, and this is kind of tough because I usually point to this. You have a very clean upper lip and chin. It's nice and creamy white. There's no lines there. There's no, Ben was talking about black bars earlier on the water, or mouth bars on the water snakes. I didn't know it for them, but here I do. So let me just skip ahead real quick to this. That's a garter snake. You can see those black bars on the scales below the eye, whereas the ribbon is clean. And again, look at the white spot in front of the eye on the ribbon. On a garter, it is not as defined. It's more just the coloration. It's not obvious. Ribbon snakes tend to be very clean in comparison to garter snakes. This is just an up close look at the keeled scales of it and how it's it's striped. You don't get checkers on ribbons. And you know, for the field guide nerds out there, there are scale counts you can do to tell the two apart. Like I said, I just kind of know because I know what they look like. My game's a little rough on the actual details. Whereas you have a garter snake here that, you know, it's definitely, you can see it's not as clean. This is actually a pretty clean garter, but you look underneath that last yellow line for the separating the side, and you can see it's kind of checkered. And here's what, like, this garter is really checkered. This is actually a big adult. I found this spring in the railroad tie in Pine Barrens. They're, like I said, garters are definitely way more uncommon in the Pine Barrens than ribbon snakes. With these two, I find that garter snakes are definitely the biters. They don't bite all the time. It's 50-50. Like I told you earlier, I really don't care about getting bit. I will actively avoid garter snake bites because they have a precursor for venom in their saliva. It's like called the Bernois gland or something like that. I'm sure one of you guys could probably give better details on that. But a lot of humans have reactions to it, from minor swelling to bruising. Me, it just itches me, and it's annoying. And if I don't have to get bit, I just don't get bit because you never know what's going to happen with venom. I had a friend of mine in Bolivia get bit by the same slightly venomous water snake that I got bit by 12 times in Peru. It only made me a little itchy. He had to get airlifted out of there and have 4 shots of adrenaline into him because he's allergic to one of the proteins. So that said, I don't mess with anything like that anymore. I have made naive mistakes in the past, but I don't need to get bit by garter snakes. It's not my idea of fun.
Yeah, Bob, could you just because we have a diverse audience, a lot of us know exactly what you're talking about when we say mild venom. Could you just briefly mention, garter snakes, where their mild venom falls compared to actual venom, how they're not really considered venomous, they're not really venomous.
So I wouldn't, the terminology they use with venomous animals of any kind is it medically significant. Garter snakes have a very weak toxin for humans. It's meant to subdue their main prey item, which is frogs. So it works on frogs a lot better than it works on us. Whereas obviously a rattlesnake's venom is going to start breaking down tissue on you right away, and you have to get to a hospital. So if you get bit by a garter, it's not the end of the world. Yeah, you could be allergic to something. You could be allergic to a mango. You could be allergic to bees. Like, it's nothing to fear. Just don't get bit by a garter snake. That's why I kind of put that out there. Because, even people who know nothing about snakes have heard of a gardener snake or a garter snake. Everybody's heard of that. So you think, oh, it's no big deal. Whereas they do hold a little bit of venom. So I err on the side of caution. I don't need to get bit by garter snakes. I don't think anybody really should test that unless, you're a herp enthusiast and already. But I include that in my talks now because I don't want anybody to be walking at a local park with their 6-year-old and have him pick up a garter snake and start chewing on his arm and his hand be swollen the next day because I told him it was a good idea. So
could we ask people while you're on that subject, very interesting subject of the idea that some snakes carry a venom that's not medically significant, but could still cause itching or swelling or something lesser than a real significant venomous bite. Anyone who's had garter snake bites, if you don't mind just typing in the comment whether you've had any reaction or whether you've had no reaction, and we'll just tally up what people write in the comments, and then you can just go ahead with your slideshow. If we get some interesting comments, I'll fill you in.
I will tell you too, my cousin, she's loved nature her whole life, and she's picked up 100 garter snakes in her life, and she's been bit. And recently she picked one up, and she had a millipede in the other hand, and the garter snake started chewing on her. But she wanted to show her younger siblings the millipede, so she just let it chew on her. She was in the hospital that night. Her hand was like a balloon. She had a bad reaction to it.
Wow.
So that's why I don't test fate with them. But I'd love to hear if anybody else is out.
My story too was I once let one chew on me for, I want to say, a half hour, and I didn't go to the hospital, but it was swelling to the point that like the hand that was bitten, I could not grip. Like if I tried to grip a baseball bat or something, I could not close it that much. It was so swollen, I couldn't get a good grip. But that was only one time out of, I'm going to say, over 100 garter snake bites. And in that case, I really let him chew on me for a half hour.
That seems to be the problem, is when they chew, because they can sink. Actually, that's what I put this picture up for. If you can see the mouth, you can see the rear fangs on it. And once they can like work that in and sink, and they keep chewing. Some snakes, they just don't let go no matter what you do, and you don't want to risk harm to the snake. So it's your fault it's biting you. You're the scary predator. So you just let it do its thing. And like you said, they can chew forever. It's just some snakes are weird that way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's when you run into problems, I believe, anyway. Not speaking as a scientist, but from what I've heard and dealt with.
Yeah, I hear you. It looks like the initial comments that are coming in is like Jordan Allen says he was a garter bite survivor with no reactions. Roy, no reactions, lots of bites. And yeah, so Jordan also mentions ringnecks and hogs are also supposedly mildly venomous with various reactions depending on sensitivity. Colin says he had a small one. Worse, it happened with some extremely weak pain. Josh says his wife Nicolette got bit by a prairie ringneck and it stung a little and turned red, but nothing major. So it sounds like a couple people have had some experiences with mild venoms. I know I've been bitten by hog noses a few times, and I wouldn't have known it's any different than any other snake, even though they're supposed to be mildly venomous.
By Western hog noses?
Western hog.
Yeah, because I was going to get into that with the hogs. Like I only know one person who's ever been bit by an Eastern hog, but I'll talk about that in a little bit.
Okay. So I didn't want to hijack your talk, but it's such an interesting topic. I want to expand on it and give people a chance to interact with their 2 cents.
That's fine with me. Shall I move on? Are we good?
Yep, go ahead.
All right. Next, we're going to move on to a rock star species. We are still working around the water, the wet habitats of the Pine Barrens, the eastern king snake. This is in the Lampropeltis genus, which also has your milk snakes, scarlet kings, mole kings, just a variety of milks and king snakes across the country, prairie kings. Probably my favorite genus, period. It'd probably be a toss up with rattlesnakes if I could handle rattlesnakes. But other than that, I love looking for kings and I love milk snakes, but we'll get to the milks later. King snakes are honestly in the Pine Barrens are the snake I find the least. It's a close runner up to the one I find the least. There's a lot of king snakes in the Pine Barrens. I think it's just a result of my herping habits. Like usually once I find the first one, they're found a lot more around cranberry bogs. There's just a lot of snakes for them to eat there. And, you know, I only walked so many cranberry bogs before I'm like, all right, I got my king snake. Now it's time for me to go find milks. Whereas milks, the sister species, on the other hand, doesn't like wet habitats. So I kind of get to more upland areas as soon as I got that king snake notched for the year. And because of that, I don't find them. I do come across a few a year though. And to show you an idea of size, this is my wife, Julie, with one. It's funny. As is probably the case with a lot of you guys, I'm always coming up with compromises like, oh, it's time to do a family thing, right? So, all right, I know a great lake in the Pine Barrens that kids could swim at. So, you know, we pack up, we go to the lake, and they're all hanging out on the edge of the lake or swimming in it, and I'm spending 3.5 hours looking for king snakes on the edge, right? We've all played this game. So this instance, I was doing that. The kids were swimming. After, I'm like, I cannot believe I just looked for 3.5 hours in this perfect habitat and saw one water snake. As we pull out of the parking lot, this king, which stretched out was about 4 feet, was literally crawling out onto the road 10 feet from where we pulled out of the parking lot. So there was a lot of traffic there. We picked it up. We enjoyed it. All the kids held it and we let it go in the water nearby on the other side in the direction it was headed, which while I'm on that topic, if you're ever going to move an animal off the road, move it in the direction it was headed and don't try to move it to a more proper area for the animal. They're there, they know their home territories. This is especially true with turtles, but I do it with snakes too. I always move them in the direction they were going because if they wanted to be there for some reason, they're just going to turn around as soon as you're out of sight and have to cross that road again. And that will be the end of a lot of animals. So take that with you if you are a wildlife hero and move turtles or snakes off the road. This is that same snake.
While you're on king snakes, Jordan asked a great question. Do you see variation in Barrens kings or are they fairly standard? He says,
I think they're pretty much fairly standard. They got thin bands. You can get cleaner individuals. Like this one's kind of blotchy and the chains broke, but you can get some really nice clean chain, like typical chain kings. I'll be honest, somebody else would be better at answering that because I've maybe seen, I don't know, 40 kings, and that's not a large population or estimate for me to go off of.
Well, and Jordan also distinguishes, he sees some in the Chesapeake that can look pretty unique.
The Chesapeake ones are amazing. I'm not trying to take anything away from our Pine Barrens kings, but the Chesapeake ones, they just have some of the cleanest, widest white bands, and they are just really, really pretty snakes. I love getting down there to find snakes. That's just a great area, and the kings are just gorgeous. And they can be monsters down there. Me and my daughter were down there once, and we came across this thing. It was like a pine snake, a big pine snake. It was at least 6 feet. I don't see them that big in Jersey. I don't know if it's just because they spend less time of the year out and about. You know, as you go down further south, things aren't hibernating as long, or denned up as long, so maybe they can eat more and they just grow larger. I don't know if that's just a personal theory. I don't know what kind of weight that holds, but never see 6 foot. I've never seen a 5 footer in the pines. I've seen a 4, maybe 4.5 feet, but yeah, that's what I see with kings anyway. I do see a lot of small ones, and I actually cruise a lot of them at night. That's me taking a picture of one I moved off of a road at night. I think this one was like maybe 10:30 at night. And it was just, a lot of people don't think, king snakes are mainly diurnal snake, but I find that in the Pine Barrens, and I'm sure across the board, snakes don't follow the rules. And I've, over the course of trying to road cruise the pines at night, which for you that don't know, is basically picking some roads through some nice looking habitat and getting out there. I mean, you can do it at all different times, but I like to be there at dusk as the sun's setting. And you can either ride in circles or big loops or just ride endlessly. I like to pick stretches of road through great habitat and ride back and forth. And to the normal person, they would be absolutely bored out of their mind. To me, it is my meditation and my happy place. And when I find a snake, it's like a rush like no other. So over the years, I've found about 6 king snakes at night. That was a little guy. But most of the time, I find them in this sort of habitat. I flipped this big girl next or under a railroad tie next to a bunch of ponds in southern Jersey, Cumberland County. That's the southern part of Pine Barrens.
Beautiful.
And of course, I'm sure we all know this, but just in case, why are they called the kings? Because they will eat anything and they are the king of the snakes. I'm going to be completely transparent here, and I feel like I might have actually used this slide 5 years ago with this group, so I'm sure you've had some turnover. This was a mistake of mine. I am not perfect. We flipped the king snake, me and my boys, and we flipped a ring neck. And I was sitting there, and you know, the kids were like, kind of like, no, don't do it, don't do it. I didn't want to feed the snake to the snake. I try not to interfere in nature. So I'm like, should I do it? And I'm just like, I'm messing with the kids. They're young, right? And lo and behold, the king lashes out of my hand and grabs the ring neck and wraps it. And like, I'm not like forcing them apart. So like I moved naturally closer and it wrapped it. And then that was all she wrote. Like at that point, I had no choice but to put the snake down and let, you know, altered nature take its course. So I'm not proud of that, but I don't want to come across as like, I just have like this lucky touch where I'm walking down a path and just happen to see this. I would not do this purposely. It was an accident and it was a lesson learned. But the end result is you get to see what a king snake does. It eats other snakes. That is its preferred diet. It will eat other things. I have come across one digging up a turtle nest, turtle egg nest, and actually the eggs were from the year before, but I guess it sniffed them out. So they will eat other things, but they love snakes. We good to
It's
go?
also neat to see that last picture there, constrictors. I thought it was pretty neat to see it had wrapped around that ring neck multiple times.
Yeah, very strong constrictors. Cool snakes. I showed you my wife holding one earlier. They can bite. They definitely can bite. I have one that chewed on my stepson for a good 2 minutes before it let go. It was actually a pretty funny video, but yeah, it was great. Sometimes you just get that revenge, you know, like, but they're usually pretty docile. If you know how to handle them, they're fine. Just accidents happen sometimes. So is this the last one? Yeah, okay, last snake I'm gonna go on about around water is a rough green snake. Now, these are endangered in Pennsylvania. In Jersey, in the Pine Barrens, they're everywhere. That said, that doesn't mean they're easy to find. They are arboreal. They are the same genus as smooth greens, which we have in Pennsylvania in the northern regions, but they act different. They both are green. Rough greens are much longer. I'm just trying to check out my next slides. And this one's on a road, but they're the arboreal version of the smooth greens. Smooth greens are terrestrial. You can find them by flipping rocks. They both are insect eaters. They love insects. Rough greens will just work briars and vegetation, and they'll just gorge themselves on spiders and damselflies and any insect they can get, they will eat. Kind of like I said, smooth greens will do that, except smooth greens stick on the ground. They're very friendly. This is about as much as you're going to get out of a rough green. As I startled it and it will gape its mouth. Again, if you have any experience with smooth green snakes, they do the same thing. I don't know of anybody who's ever been bitten by either, but they try to be scary and show you that black mamba mouth.
Wow.
This is about the size of an average adult. That's my daughter. After a day of herping, again, don't tell her she would kill me now. She's a teenager, and if she saw me putting a picture up of her with less than perfect hair, I would have to deal with her later. So please keep that to yourselves. But that is the average size of an adult. And here's the difference. This is why they call them the rough green snake, because they have keeled scales, whereas smooth greens aren't. They don't have those little folds, little ridges in the scales. The easiest way to find these, and I'd like to say that I was the first person to actually try to do it. And I'm sure people will try, but I was the first person to go public about it because it sounds crazy. But like I said, I'm sick enough I like to find outliers, is to find them at night, because rough greens will find trees and they will sleep. This is a sleeping individual. Snakes don't have eyelids. Trust me, it is sleeping. They are so easy when you're actually around them. They're so easy to find at night because you shine lights and they stick out like a sore thumb. During the day, different story. They mix in. They look just like briars, and they are built to look like briars. Actually, a funny story. My lifer rough green. One of the things rough greens do, one of their defense mechanisms, is they wave their head like this, and it's supposed to mimic vegetation moving in the wind. My first lifer green, I'm coming down the sand road with a buddy and one of my sons. This is like 2011. And I see this green finally stretched out in a road after I could not find one for like the first 6 years I was in the Pine Barrens. I straddle it. I swear I almost put my SUV up on two wheels because I had never seen a rough green. I don't know how it's going to act. I'm thinking, oh, my lifer is going to bolt off the road. Almost flipped the car, rushed back to it, and this goofy thing's sitting there. Didn't move anything, just swaying, thinking it's hiding in the vegetation, but it's a green snake on the sand road. I just thought that was so funny because like it's so ingrained in them. Like I said, these things are so hard to see during the day unless you luck upon one on a road, because in the vegetation, they look like this. There's my son taking a picture of one. I don't know if any of you can see it. I'll give you a few seconds. Do you see the rough green? Do you see it, Jesse?
No, I don't even notice it.
Yeah, neither do I. That's why. My son found that one. You know, younger eyes always have them with you. And they just mix in and you would never see him. That's a snake he was taking a picture of.
That's funny you say that because I've been archery hunting with my son for the first time. And it's funny for him, having never shot a deer or anything like that. He is already noticing deer that I'm not noticing. And and he's like, he can't sit still. He's distracted. You're right. Younger eyes are really helpful.
Oh yeah. People think I can find snakes. It's my kids.
Yeah.
They don't have Facebook. So I'm like, oh, look at the snake I found.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions on them? I'll move on. What time is it? Am I going on too long?
It's 8:30.
Okay. I'm going to try and speed it up. I was talking earlier about how I love Lamprepeltis. This is like neck and neck. When you ask me what my favorite snake is, it's usually the last snake, and it's usually a hognose or a milk, sometimes a timber. I love hognose snakes, as everybody does.
Yep.
This is one of the instances where Pennsylvania wins. When you find them in the Pine Barrens, what you're seeing here is a good-looking greenish individual. Compared to some of the ones you'll find in the mountains in Pennsylvania, they are bright orange, a bright yellow, like bumblebee looking. Some of them are super red. They come in all different colors. Black, well, you don't get too many melanistic ones up here. They're a little further south, but pretty dark gray or even a lighter slate gray. You get all sorts of colors. In the Pine Barrens, you get this greenish, you'll get some orangey colors. This was one of the prettier individuals. It was like a juvenile. So when they're like this long, they can have all these little subtle colors on them. And I'm hoping that's coming across in the Zoom meeting. But like, you just have lavenders and pinks and oranges and greens when you look closer. And they're my favorite snake to find, unless I just found like a really cool milk snake. They are fossorial. A lot of things in the Pine Barrens are super fossorial in nature. Probably a lot more fossorial in the Pine Barrens than they are in Pennsylvania. They got that snout that's, as you can see, is built for digging, and it could be digging out toads, but that just allows them to get into the sand and looser sand really easily, just like a lot of Pine Barren species. I don't think they're digging into too much other than when they're nesting in the mountains. They do like more loamy soil, but I don't think anything in Pennsylvania is as fossorial as it is in the Pine Barrens. It's just a different habitat, different ways for these snakes to act. Like I said, this was an orange one. Unfortunately, I had some bad light on it, but this was probably about as orange as they come in the Pine Barrens. This is kind of your typical hognose. A hognose is a hognose. It can be the ugliest hognose in the world, and it's still a hognose, right? So this is a typical hognose. I flipped it under a railroad tie. That's a common theme. Railroad ties, when you have them discarded on the side of old railroad tracks, just gives you a lot to flip. It helps your search. You have to just have more chance to find things. So I like to flip. I don't like to flip railroad ties, but if I'm trying to find snakes, I like to flip railroad ties. This is probably one of the best looking ones I found, and this is actually in situ shot. This was really cool. This is like April 7th, 2 years ago. And me and Julie, my wife, we were just out walking around these cranberry bogs, and we were on the way out, and it was more upland habitat. And we see this really nice yellow hognose laying on a charred piece of wood they had to burn that winter. And it was really early for a hog. I mean, April 7th is really early, at least for a hog. I'm sure where their hibernaculum is, they come out best. And as much as I tried, I wanted to find that snake again and kind of prove out that it was denning there. I never could find it again. I tried like 2 weekends in a row, but it had to be denning there. It was way too early. It was probably just a little hole in the ground somewhere that the snake figured out, went into a root system or something. I don't know. These snakes know what they're doing a lot more than I do, but I could not figure it out. But a really cool early season find. It's a really pretty juvenile. And while I'm on this topic, one of the reasons hognose are herpers' favorites, which I apologize to all the herpers watching because I'm sure you already know, but to the people who don't, this is a harmless snake. It does have some venom. It does have rear fangs. You really have to be doing something wrong to get bit by a hognose. I know it's happened. It's happened to a friend of mine who is a very ethical herper, so it had to be an accident. But other than that one like standalone story, these guys do not bite. They do everything else. They are the best actors, not in snakes. I think they're one of the best actors in animal species alone. As you can see, this thing is putting up like a cobra. It is not a cobra. It is a cute little snake that you just want to push its nose, right? They hood up. They play dead. They will roll over, have their mouth open. They will play dead. The tongue will be hanging out. This is a really, really, really cool thing to see the first time you see it. Everybody who's never seen a hognose wants to see the whole death feigning thing. They want to see all the tricks, right? Once is enough, because once a snake dies that decides it wants to stay dead and it's just acting, it is so good, you might as well have found a dead snake on the road. You pick it up, it is limp in your hands, it's drooling on you, it probably just crapped on itself. It's just a mess. It's no fun. It's really neat. If you see it once, that's great. Once is enough. I try not to make this happen. That said, with hognose, everybody's different. Everybody's got a different demeanor. I don't know. I wouldn't call it a personality or a snakeanality. It could just be like that you, but like I find like maybe gravid females won't play dead as easy. But I don't know. There's probably a million different variables on why a snake will play dead or not. That said, I try my best not to make it happen. And not because I feel that it stresses the snake out. I actually had a friend who did a hognose study, and he had marked over 180 different hognoses and studied them for 4 years. And he came to the conclusion that the whole death feign act and all is not a stressor on them any more than a rattlesnake rattling its tail. It's just what it does, and it doesn't burn any calories or anything. That said, I don't like to have it happen because sometimes they will vomit up a meal, and that is where I feel like I've made a mistake, because that means that the toad or the frog died in vain, and these snakes got to work for their meals sometimes. So I do my best not to make that happen. So that is the one ethical reason I do my best not to make this happen. That said, sometimes you look at a snake wrong and it rolls over and it plays dead. It's you never can tell with these guys. And you turn them, you flip them right upside down or right side up, they will turn back upside down until you leave. So when it happens, I kind of raise my hands and say, great, hopefully it comes back to life. And if it doesn't, I usually will move it deep into the woods and cover it with leaves so that it's not a sitting duck for a hawk that's flying by or whatever. I know hawks have to eat too. I love birds. I know that's blasphemy in this group. I do love birds, and I do love nature, but I don't want to feel like I made it happen. Kind of like that king snake. You know, I don't want to leave a snake out there to get eaten by a hawk when it was my fault.
Hey, Bob, could you give us some percentages, and maybe some other people that encounter hognoses every year could give us some percentages of the ones you meet? Is there like a certain percentage that you see play dead? Because I haven't run into a lot where I herp. I've only run into 2 in the last so many years. And I think both of the 2 I ran into ended up playing dead. How many of yours have ended up playing dead? And does it in your experience, does it typically take a lot for them to play dead? And the rest of you guys watching in the cheap sheets, go ahead and fill in the comments if yours have played dead, or what percentage yours have played dead.
I feel like it's half and half. I might be skewed because a lot of times I'll go out in May and June, and actually Jordan had commented earlier. I know he's experienced this where he's found a lot of gravid females, and I feel like they're less prone to play dead. But I think if you handle a snake, like if you pick up a snake, right? I try and give it a place to move, but sometimes you have to have a little grip on it because you don't want to drop the snake. I feel sometimes if you grip a hognose just a little bit because you don't want it to hit the ground, that's when it can happen. That said, sometimes you'll walk up on it and you can tell the snake will be there like this, right? And you will see it start to turn. And once it starts to turn, you're like, oh no, and you back off and it flattens out. You can tell and you move and it'll turn, and you just know that snake's going to play dead if I even breathe on it. Like, you just, I think every situation is different. I don't know how many hogs I've seen, probably well over 100. I had one day in Canada where I saw 17, which was insanity. But I'd say 50-50 for me.
We're getting similar reports out here. Josh says about half play dead for him in New Mexico, and he would have the Western hognoses out there. But he says usually only if he handles them do they play dead. Now, Ben from New Jersey says he's seen 5, each one he handled, and only 1 out of 5 play dead. So that's 20% with handling 100%. Jordan Allen says probably 50% or maybe less play dead for him in Pennsylvania, but the one he found in Kansas was a lot more aggressive and bluffed harder than any he had seen in PA. Roy, Zach, or Adam, and I believe that's going to be Roy, just knowing the herping habits of those 3 people. He says only about half or so play dead, although Roy typically does not handle them. So that's kind of interesting. So 100% of my 2 that I found play dead, but I think I handled 100. I handled both of them.
We got to get you some hogs this year.
Ben Genter says the hogs in Indiana seem to play dead a lot more.
Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I've given up trying to figure out snakes. I've realized no matter how much time I put in the field or how many books I read, they'll always do something different.
Yeah.
This was a snake we actually found, and as you can see, me and Julie were out running. We were training for a half marathon, and this was October in a preserve in the Pine Barrens. And this snake was stretched out right across the path. So I didn't have a camera. I had no reason to handle it other than I wanted to move it off the path so that the next person coming down didn't beat it to death with a stick. So here's a good example. We picked it up as gentle as can be. You can see it laying there like it's a dead snake in Julie's hand. So this was an example of a snake that I went and tucked under some leaves and pine needles, well off the path, well out of the way of a hiker with a stick or a hawk. So I talked about how kings were probably my second least found snake. That's because of this snake, the northern scarlet snake. This is probably the prettiest snake on the East Coast. And I know everybody's going to have favorites, but I mean, come on. These snakes are absolutely gorgeous. I find these only maybe a few a year because, to be honest, there's one spot in the Pine Barrens where they're a lot more numerous, and it is backbreaking. You go flip railroad ties for hours. I mean, I've gotten lucky and I flipped one in the first 15 minutes. And then I used to keep track of how many railroad ties I flipped, which is a dirty, hard job. And one year took me 3 trips and 1,700 railroad ties till I got my first scarlet snake.
Wow.
And that's me knowing where they're found. So, like I said, they're very, very uncommon. I don't think they're rare, but they're uncommon in the Pine Barrens. They're just harder for the herper to find. So when you have a bunch of railroad ties, that just, like I said, it makes it easier to find. This is a big gravid female with a really neat pattern. I flipped under a railroad tie. Compare that to a younger one. This is probably a yearling. I found it in May, so it's probably born the year before. You can see how the neck's not orange yet compared to this. Typically, this is a really neat pattern on this, but that's what you get, the colors. You get the orange neck, the red blotches with the yellowish bands, yellow and black bands. And like I said, just the prettiest snakes we have. I mean, they're not my favorite, so don't think pretty means favorite, but I mean, hands down, they got the looks.
Great.
They're very hard to find because, again, you can see that pointy snout. They are super fossorial, probably the most fossorial of all our snakes, maybe worm snakes, but they're just not as numerous as worm snakes. They're down in the sand. They're usually nocturnal, moving around at night. They are huge egg eaters. That's the bulk of their diet. I'm sure they will mix in a lizard here and there because there's not eggs available year round. But I feel like in egg laying season, they take that opportunity to gorge themselves. And what they'll actually do is they'll find lizard or turtle eggs, right? Like this 5-line skink mom guarding her eggs right here. And they won't swallow the eggs whole. They'll burrow their nose into them, wrap a coil around the egg, and then squeeze the contents into their mouth. So I thought that was a really neat natural history note on these guys. I love scarlet snakes. Wish I found more, but once I get my fill, it's kind of like the king snakes. I move on. Like I said, they're fossorial. They are harmless to humans. They do not bite. I don't know that I've ever had one musk me. I think they rely on their coloration. Like I forget the term for it, but like, look at my bright red colors. I'm scary. Don't eat me. You know, I was out herping with a friend one day, and to show you how fossorial in nature they are, he decided to try and burrow into his beard to escape us. I'm going to move on to the other Lamprepeltis species you can find in the Pine Barrens. It's coastal plains milk snakes. This is one of the most highly debated species in the country because everybody's got a different theory on them. Are they eastern milks? Are they scarlet kings? Are they an intergrade? Is this just a regional variant of the eastern milk? There's been recent studies that say that the milk snakes in the Pine Barrens are just regional variants of eastern milk snakes. So that would be called a Lamprepeltis triangulum, right? They used to call them Lamprepeltis triangulum temporalis when they were considered a subspecies. So I call them triangulum, but when I'm referring to the snakes that I find on the coastal plain, I just call them coastal plains milks. That's my way to differentiate them. Milks are my favorite snakes to look for. I will specifically target them, hogs, timbers, and sometimes smooth greens if my wife's with me because she likes them. But milks, I specifically target more than anything because especially in the Pine Barrens, you never know what you're going to get. This was a really large, this is the largest coastal I've ever gotten. This was 36 and a half inches. I measured it. It was like a giant Eastern, but as you can see, it's still holding some of that red that is typical with coastal plains milks. And so that I didn't give you a whole presentation on coastals, I only am including the ones I found this year. I think I found 8. It was a pretty average year for me. This was a very typical Eastern looking milk, getting photobombed by a yellow jacket. But it still was this would be like a really good looking Eastern milk, at least in the Piedmont or the mountains that I heard. This was a really poor picture because this thing would not cooperate, but this was a larger coastal that had some pinkish color. This was an orangey brown color. And then you get to what everybody wants to find. This is what everybody's looking for in the coastal plains, or a Jersey coastal plains milk snake. They hold that red. This is a smaller individual, but that thing probably would have held that red. You have very good saddles down the side, a lot less side blotches than you'll have in the Easterns. Like, look at this red. It's just like, that's a deeper red. When I'm flipping through trash, sometimes I'm out at midnight flipping through shingle piles. If you don't know what a shingle pile is, it's exactly what it sounds like. Somebody who had their roof redone, or the contractor that redid the roof, didn't want to go dump the shingles into a dumpster. They went into the Pine Barrens and pushed them all out the back of their pickup truck, and they've laid there for decades. Milk snakes love shingle piles. I hate it because, like I said, I'll be out at midnight sometimes digging through shingles filled with roaches, filled with rusty nails, wondering what the hell I'm doing with my life. But it's all worth it when you flip shingles and then you get this flash of red. And it's like, oh my God, it's like the 12-year-old in me is like, it's just what I live for. It's just like the quote I shared at the beginning of the presentation. If you see this flash of red, then you got to dig and dig and dig for it. And it's just, it's everything for me. That's one of the best looking ones I found this year. This guy was doing like a scarlet snake impression. He had that little orange dot on his head. I don't know what that was about. And look at this. Like, I dream about these things, guys. Like, these are my dreams. I wish I would dream about other things, like things I can't see with the, other things I wish I would dream about. No, I dream about snakes. Let me see where I'm at here. And then this is, like I said, I like to show off the size with people. This is my stepdaughter holding an average size adult milk snake. They tend to run smaller in the coastal plains, but I have found a few monsters like that first one before I moved on. So I think I have 3 snakes left. I'll try and make this quick, although these are probably the best rock star snakes in the Pine Barrens. I was talking earlier about how the Southern Affinity species match with the Northern Affinity. One of those species is the corn snake. We do not have these in Pennsylvania. They are endangered in the Pine Barrens, but that said, there's a lot of them. They put these terminologies, endangered, threatened, on some of these snakes in the Pine Barrens because the habitat's threatened. Because if that 1978 comprehensive management plan were to break down, that's a lot of real estate that a lot of Walmarts and a lot of, airports or apartment buildings would like to take over. So these snakes are endangered and threatened because they're very special and specific to the Pine Barrens, and the habitat is under fire. So corn snakes are very prolific down south in New Jersey. They are an endangered species. I find they're highly nocturnal snakes, but I find them during the day just as much. Here's one that I found on the road. And just in case there's any law enforcement watching, this was a corn snake I found down south. You're not allowed to handle them in New Jersey. So I usually will just sit there and try and, stand behind the snake until it moves off of the road in New Jersey, because they're tough. The rules are tough in New Jersey, and that's good because it protects it from poachers and the bad people. But I don't want to see a snake get hit because of a law. I'd rather save its life. So find a ton of these on the road. Here's one I found at night that posed nicely for me in pitch pine, which is the most popular tree you're going to find in the Pine Barrens. But even corn snakes, right? And a lot of people corn snake snobs will say, oh, Jersey corns are ugly. I find that to be untrue. You can find duller corn snakes. They're not going to be Okeechobee corns or something you're going to find in South Florida. But you have a lot of variability in the Pine Barrens species. Like, look at that. Look at the light. That corn is gorgeous. And that's not a young corn. That guy was about 2.5 feet stretched out. And then, so this was that one hibernaculum, right? And literally right next to it was this guy. Like, look at the differences in the same population. So it's not like once you've seen one, you've seen them all. They're the same species, but the differences are just so immense. And you might get lucky, and this was my claim to fame for a while. I came across an albino corn. So you just never know what you're going to get out there. I talked to a lot of people about this one, and they all seem to agree that this wasn't something you would find in the pet trade. I don't know anything about pets. I don't know. I know there's a lot of albino and genetic mutated corns in the pet trade. I don't know if that was somebody's released animal or not. All I know is I found it by hibernaculum in April. It did make it through the winter. It had some sores on it, some blisters from being in some moisture in the den for the winter. So I'd never know for sure. Nonetheless, it was a really neat find. And I do find a lot of smaller ones on the road at night, and that's kind of just what they do. If they're not going to flee from you, is they kind of twitch their head and kind of hope you go away. These guys are big climbers. They're definitely terrestrial, but they do climb a lot because they are bird eaters. They're the same genus as black rats or Pantherophis. Black or eastern rats are Pantherophis alleghaniensis. Corns are Pantherophis putatus. So these are actually called red rats in a lot of the southern states. I'll shoot that. All right, and here is what is probably the pinnacle of Pine Barrens herping. Anybody who wants to come to the Pine Barrens comes for two reasons: Pine Barrens tree frogs and pine snakes. We're talking about snakes. So the Pine Barrens is what I would call a pilgrimage spot. If you're in the herping community and you're an avid herper, you want to hit places like Southern Florida or anywhere Florida, or West Texas for Alterna, or the Sky Islands in Arizona during monsoon season. The Pine Barrens is one of those spots that people want to hit. Unfortunately, it's a lot easier to see all my pictures online or any Pine Barrens herpers pictures online, and you get the sense that there's all these snakes there. They're extremely hard to find. You don't see all the hours I put into not finding things. So everybody comes with this dream. They hear, oh, there's tons of pine snakes in the Pine Barrens, and they're going to find handfuls of pine snakes, and it's just simply not true. I had a group of people, legends in the community, actually come herp the Pine Barrens for 9 days, and they asked me, will you show us around? And we want a pine snake. I'm like, please go to the mountains. It's so much easier. A good day in the pines is like 20 snakes. Like a really good day is 20 snakes, and most of them are going to be the trifecta. A good day in the mountains, I can get over 100 snakes, and it's like 10 different species. Like, please just ask me for mountains advice, not pines. But they said no. Pine snake is our #1 goal. We are not leaving the Pine Barrens until we get the pine snake. It's a group of 5 guys and me and a few other people who showed them around. In 9 days, they found 1 pine snake. So that goes to show you.
If you
Gotcha.
had to just throw ballpark a number on it, would you say like how many hours between pine snakes? Is it like one every 20 hours, 50 hours? Any guesses?
I'd
I mean,
say one every, if I'm not checking dens, which is cheating, in season, I'd say one every 4, maybe one every 50 hours.
Mhm.
I mean, you have days where it's just that everything's right, and snakes they're on a female or whatever, and they're scent trailing her, or whatever. You might see 3. It's happened once or twice, but typically, so I go out to the pine, but like I said, one day every other weekend, and then at night I go out once a week. It's just some people go to the bar, I go look for snakes. That's just my way to decompress. I've found 4 pine snakes all year, and that's basically, I've probably been there 50 times this year. So
Cool.
and a lot of that is night cruising, but I've even cruised one at night this year. So that was one of the 4. So that was an anomaly. It's hard. It's unless you are privy to den sites, it's hard. But that's part of the challenge, and that's part of the reward. When you see one, it's like that shot in the arm.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said, we do have days where you get lucky. Like this was right near her nest, and this was, I don't know, she has two yearling pine snakes. We actually found 3 right there. Sometimes you get lucky like that, but that's the difference between a yearling pine snake and one that grows to be 6.5 feet. All these handling pictures I've done with permitted individuals around. So this was a smaller adult. This guy was probably about 4.5 feet. So you can see the size difference, right? So they get very large. Again, docile snakes. I've probably seen 200-ish pine snakes in my time. I've never been bit. Never once been bit. They put on a great show. They hiss super loud. I one time flipped the car hood, and as I grabbed the edge, I hear tss, and immediately I'm thinking, my fingers are in the way of a timber rattlesnake. So, I turn it, and it's a pine snake hissing. They put up a great show when they want to. They bluff, they gape their mouth, they hiss incredibly loud, and they will strike, but it's a bluff strike. They will just hit you with their nose. They will not open their mouth. They will not clamp on you. So they literally tap you with their nose. That's the most I've ever seen them do. I know people have been bitten by them. Like I said, weird things happen. It's never happened to me. Wow. Super cool snakes. Everybody wants to see them. I don't blame them. It's just when people ask me for advice, I'm like, listen, I can give you the absolute best advice with the best weather and the best timing all year. And I can't help you beyond that. You may go see racers, ringnecks, and worm snakes all day. There's nothing I can do. Pine snakes are variable too. As you can see, this is a duller version one. Look at this one this is a very black and white one. They come duller. Some of them have reddish in them. This was a very dark individual. Adults, big adults. This one I was trying to take pictures of, and it started crawling up on my big flash. This was just this year. And that's pine snakes. That's what everybody wants to come for. I got one more snake in the Pine Barrens. It's the only venomous snake. I already touched on this earlier. Before we get into that, Jesse actually talked about in Pennsylvania how everything's a copperhead. I see it a ton in the Pine Barrens forum. Everybody's also seen copperheads. They will swear on their children's lives they have seen copperhead, and I don't know what I'm talking about. Copperheads simply do not exist in the Pine Barrens. This is a copperhead for comparison. I'd say most people probably mistake milk snakes or water snakes for copperheads. Again, you got the pointy triangular head, the elliptical pupils. You're only going to see that in the rattlesnake. There's another version of its head. Oops, wrong way. Hold on. That's a baby individual with that yellow caudal lure. They call that a caudal lure. It'll actually, when the babies need help hunting, they will actually wiggle that tail around to bring something in, thinking it's a worm. These guys eat a lot of cicadas as babies, whatever. This isn't a presentation on copperheads, but just something I wanted to point out. And then we move on to the final snake in the Pine Barrens, the timber rattlesnake, the only medically significant snake in the Pine Barrens. That said, they have no interest in biting anyone. I've never had, that's a lie. I've had rattlesnakes strike at me when I've mistakenly jumped up on a boulder that I wasn't paying attention to. I've startled snakes. Most of the time they just explode and they're off, but it does happen. But I've never had a timber in the Pine Barrens where it's all flat ground strike at me, because I've never done anything that would present it as a danger. Their defense is to sit there, worry about their camouflage working, and of course the rattle. And if that doesn't work, they're going to try and flee if they can, but they're usually stand their ground, which is great for picture taking and really leaves you no reason to handle them. And for the newer people, I was there too. I wanted to handle my first rattlesnake and I needed a picture and all that stuff. Of course, with a hook, I'm not 100% stupid, but I would have a tail and a handle, and I get it. But you grow out of that because there's really no reason to handle them because they will sit still in most cases. Let's see where I'm at here. So this is a very typical looking Pine Barrens rattlesnake. A lot of people down here are calling them pine breaks, whereas you have cane breaks down south. It's just kind of like a common name that seems to be catching on, but they're technically the same species as the ones you will find in the mountains. In the mountains, you'll see a lot of yellow or black phase. In the pines, a lot of the older, bigger adults are this kind of more dingy brown looking color. Doesn't mean I love them any less. Sorry, double slide. You will occasionally find darker individuals. Like if you didn't tell me any better, I would think you found that in the mountains, but you will find darker individuals in the Pine Barrens, but it's definitely less common. I'd say it's probably less than 1 or less than 10% of them are the dark phase. Just another look at both ends, the business end and the warning end of the timber. I've had the good fortune of coming across a mom with babies a few times out there. I know some rookery sites. This individual was actually down in a hole. You can see all the babies out of focus in front of her. I obviously didn't pull the snakes out, but she looked like she had about a dozen babies with her. And one of the cool things about rattlesnakes is they do maternally care for their babies. That they won't, go out and find them food or anything, but they stick around for a while. Most snakes lay their eggs in ditch or just lay their live young in ditch. A timber mom will usually hang around her babies for a while. I don't know if she'll hang around until they shed, or maybe the first one sheds or whatever, but then she'll leave them be. But she will stick around for a few days, and I think that's really cool. And I have come across moms that actually in a very weird, rare sense of it with snakes, they won't obviously chase you down, but they will crawl towards you to kind of see what your deal is. Are you gonna mess with me and my babies or what? Again, it's not aggressive, but it is a very weird instance, rare instance where they kind of will come towards you. Timbers are also an endangered species in New Jersey. The only 2 endangered snakes in the Pine Barrens are timbers and corn snakes. And strangely enough, I find more of them on the road at night than any other snake. Both are very highly nocturnal. I find them both during the day plenty as well, but this was one of the many I found at night. I've probably seen more on the roads at night in the Pine Barrens than during the day. And when they're this size, which is what I call subadult, maybe 2.5 feet, I think that's when they're their best looking. They are a golden color. The gold glows. I should have picked a better picture for this than that. But yeah, they're just incredible to come across. And again, you got to get them off the road without breaking any laws. And that's sometimes pretty hard to do. I came across this litter of rattlesnake babies. The mom had already been gone. I was out jogging. I was doing a training the running. And what's cool about it is I get to cover a lot more ground and pines that I never would have seen instead of hopping from trash pile to trash pile like normally. And I found this random board, and I'm jogging and I flip it, and there's 12 or 13 baby rattlesnakes under this board that the mom must have gave birth to, and she was already gone. I could not believe it. I wanted to cry because I only had my cell phone on me. This is a cell phone shot, and I would have stopped my run right there and just taken a bunch of real camera pictures for a half hour and just enjoyed it. But as it may, I laid the board back down, made sure nobody was pinched in there, and was on my way. I just thought that was really incredible. Now, these guys look very gray because they haven't shed out yet. This is what a Jersey pine break can look like as a baby. Look at this thing. You're going to think you're down south looking at cane breaks. Like, it is just so brilliant. They don't look like that in the mountains. And I do like our mountains adults better, but the babies are incredible in the Pine Barrens. Does anybody have any questions? Because I am basically done, and I appreciate your time. I've run through the 17 species, and hopefully I have taught you something, or at least entertained you, and I really appreciate it, guys.
I definitely got to say, Bob, that is an awesome looking timber, that last picture. That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's like a baby canebrake.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah, but
That's gorgeous.
And he or she will probably, when they're that subadult, 2.5, they get this really golden color, but that's pretty gold there too. But it's a different, and then they brown out as they get to adults. Or they get
that's sharp. That's a really nice looking snake.
Yeah, you see a lot of them on the roads at night if you got the patience to do it and time it right. So
Wow.
So that's it for me, guys. Thank you very much.
Well, that's awesome, guys. If you want to ask verbal questions, this is a great time to unmute yourself. If you just want to chime in and do a verbal question, if you want to type them in the chat box, you can. Andrew Allison says, such a cool talk. Thank you so much. I think that's kind of everyone's sentiments. Really awesome talk. And thank you very much, Bob. Anyone else, feel free to chime in if you'd like to. Also, I want to say special hi to Chad Arment. I saw Chad Arment is tuning in. He's one of the past presidents of the Herpetology Club. I think he lives in Ohio, so it's really neat to see Chad here in our meeting tonight. And again, Greg just reposted the link for it's etsy.com/shop/fascinature. You guys will find that in the chat box if you guys want to go there and order some of these calendars. And again, a portion of all those calendar proceeds are going to actual habitat conservation, I believe, through Rainforest Trust again this year. So anything you buy, right, Bob, we're not only getting cool stuff, you're helping save herps.
Yeah, I'm going to speak on that. If you see any questions, just interrupt me. Is that okay? So yeah, guys, I don't do this for me. Every cent of profit from these calendars, this is my 9th year doing it, goes to wildlife conservation. And I built a very good relationship with the Rainforest Trust. When I first started, my first donation went to the Pine Barrens. My second donation went to bog turtle habitat. I reassessed my goal, my mission in life, and I decided, to make a long story short, that I wanted to put all the money in the most biodiverse hotspots that were under the most prevalent attack at the time. That just so happens to be the rainforest. And the Rainforest Trust has a number of different projects going on. Every year I ask them to allocate my money to different projects. Last year I donated $6,600. And this is from calendars, from selling calendars, from me bugging you guys to buy a calendar. $6,600 to the Rainforest Trust. And they got some land rights for indigenous people in Peru, and were able to save close to 20,000 acres with that just last year.
Wow.
Other years I've actually bought acres. I haven't bought acres. I've donated the money for them to buy acres to expand on preserves. So like, that's kind of what I want out of this, is to feel like I'm really making a mark. I'm trying to give back to the stuff that I love. And like I said, there's nothing wrong with people trying to make a buck off of this stuff. I'm definitely not against that, but I make a decent living. I don't need to make money off this. Every cent from these every cent of profit goes to the Rainforest Trust. They're $20 a piece. You're going to see on Etsy that they're for 25. And I'm giving you the coupon for Lanc5, so you get your $5 off. That's only going to be there for the weekend. Feel free to come to me direct, and then Etsy fees won't get taken out. But if you're more comfortable going through there, go through there. And I would really appreciate the support, guys. I really would.
Like a really great way to view which calendars are available. Like if you're not sure if you want to do tropical birds or you want to do raptors, or you want to do snakes of Pennsylvania, snakes of the rainforest, snakes of New Jersey Pine Barrens, you can view all the different calendars at the Etsy.com link. And then if you guys know Bob, if you want to just PayPal Bob directly, you can opt out of that. You don't have to buy them on Etsy. You could buy them on Etsy if that's easiest. That's definitely a very easy setup to see what calendars are available. But then they can also just PayPal you directly and send money as you're sending it to a friend, because it's not a business. It really is a fundraiser. Is that right, Bob?
Yeah, I do PayPal, Venmo. I take checks. People have sent me $20 bills. I don't care, as long as it gets to the right place. However you're comfortable with doing it, I would appreciate your consideration. Like I said, I don't want people to feel obligated to buy this stuff. It's just like if you use a calendar, consider throwing it my way, because the profits go towards the animals and towards land conservation, which saves everything, not just the snakes. It saves everything. So, and gifts. If you're going to spend money on gifts, and you have somebody in your family that, like I said, like Jesse said, I have 12 different 2021 calendars to choose from. A lot of them are herps. I got 3 different birds. One, I have a tropical inverts calendar. That's a whip scorpion. It's like tarantulas and scorpions and stuff like that. Like I offer different things. I have Africa is my #1 seller so far this year. Again, I took my honeymoon in Africa. I'm up to, before this started, I had 412 calendars sold so far this year. Africa is winning again.
Wow.
So check out what I have, and think about gifts. They're cheap gifts, and they're well made. I've been using the same company for 9 years. So
yeah, we get them every year, guys. I usually have one by my desk and one in my reptile room. They're just really nice to have up, and I can't tell you how many times it's nice to look at a calendar. I know this may sound silly to actually like pitch why you should buy a calendar, but if I get out my phone to look at a calendar, I have like 5 notifications, and I find myself on Instagram for a half hour, and I don't even remember why I went to look at my phone to begin with. But if I actually look at a paper calendar, I'm like, what day is it? Let me look at my calendar. Oh, that's what day it is. Wow, that's a beautiful hognose snake. And then I get back to doing my work. So really, guys, go the old-fashioned route. Also, these old-fashioned calendars, the paper calendars that Bob is selling for fundraisers. Bob, how many batteries do they take, and how long do you have to charge those calendars?
I will tell you this: I put the moon phases in them in case you like road cruising and you're looking for new moons and stuff. So
very nice.
Yeah. So I really appreciate it, guys. And like I said, just if you're friends with me on Facebook or whatever, if you're not friends with me, find me and friend me, #1, because we like the same stuff. And if you're out finding stuff in the field, I'd like to see what you're finding. So find me, friend me, and just message me, ask me any questions. One of the reasons I love doing this project is because when I'm soliciting people for business, and I don't mind because it's a project that I believe in, it also starts conversations with people that are interesting to me that I haven't maybe talked to all year. And it breaks off from, hey, yeah, let me buy a calendar, and we talk about how the year was. So come at me, please.
Guys, I'll just tell you, if any of you guys have a business and you want to give away calendars to important clients, one of the things we actually do, even through the reptile rescues, we have some donors every year that just are like regular monthly donors that support us. And when we send them a thank you letter at the end of the year, we also send them one of Bob's calendars. And it's a neat thing we can send them, instead of just being like, oh, look at this generic calendar that we got, printed up off of Cafe Press or whatever. We can send them a note that says, hey, look at this calendar that we got. And every calendar we get helps to save acres of the rainforest. So even if you guys have a business, it's a really fun excuse to spend your business's money to buy calendars for important clients and stuff, and let them know that those calendars are helping to preserve wildlife habitat and stuff. So
these are all my pictures, guys. These are my blood, sweat, and tears. Like I borrowed a leopard shot for last year's calendar because we did see a leopard, but it got away in the night, and I had to borrow a bog turtle for my turtles calendar 6 years ago before I found bog turtles and had my own pictures to use. So bear that in mind, that this is all my work, and it's all new pictures from this year. So I would really appreciate it.
It's great stuff. I'm going to throw in a question from Ben. He says, love the presentation. I was wondering, do you find more snakes in the Barrens undercover or basking?
Undercover. Definitely undercover. Wow. I find more snakes undercover everywhere, except Canada. That was one weird day.
Huh.
Oh, yeah.
It's Zach here. I just want to say we always appreciate you coming to do this for us, especially this year where you know it's such a different format. I think you did a really good job. Really appreciate you your presentation. So thank you.
Thank you. It's a privilege to talk for you guys. Your Herp club has been going strong forever, and I love. You know, I don't do this like Jesse. I'm not doing 200 shows a year in non-pandemic years or anyway. But like, I get nervous, but like I love talking snakes. So once I'm past like the 5-minute mark, you gotta like I said, you gotta hook me off stage because I'll just keep talking.
Well, you fit it all in this time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still waiting for August through December, right?
I was wet behind the ears on that. I didn't know how to. I don't know. I went pretty long on this one, I think. Yeah. Just have to get out of the library.
We kind of, we're okay. So I figured everyone's got a designated driver since they're already at home to begin with. And also I sidetracked on a couple of them where I thought, that you brought up some really interesting things, and we have so many good herpers that are on this call right now or on this presentation. It's really nice in this format just to be able to throw things back to the audience and say, guys, chime in with your experience. And I feel like, a number of the people, Jordan Allen and Ben and a bunch of different people, Roy, you guys just have great feedback to go along with Bob's talk. So anyway, Bob, thanks for leading that. And thanks for everyone watching on Facebook and on Zoom. You guys have made this really interesting meeting with all the feedback involved. So we hope to see you guys at future meetings as well.
Yeah, that's nice. I love when there's other herpers in the crowd. Like I'm just up here talking, but Jordan's a fantastic herper. Ben's killing it. I know Harvey's out there. I don't see any more faces on here. I don't know who else is in here. Josh Ems, I followed him in New Mexico for a decade. I'm still waiting to get out there and have him show me around if he'll have me. So, it's great that everybody's here.
It's really cool hearing from different audiences. One of the weird things that changed for me, for those of you guys who don't know, I do like school assemblies and stuff like that almost full time with reptiles. And I do a lot for elementary schools, which is usually a lot of fun in person because elementary kids are just a ton of fun. And usually I do a handful of middle school programs, and I don't like them that much because middle schoolers in person can be a pain. But doing virtual programs for middle schoolers is so awesome because through chat and stuff, they ask the greatest questions, and it really is a lot of fun. And I really enjoy this audience that we have here tonight, asking great questions and also giving great feedback. Harvey says, Bob, the rock star. By the way, there's a write-in campaign for you that's starting. Bob Ferguson 2020 has been mentioned here in the chat. You're going to get elected for something. I don't know what, but Harvey says, great photos, awesome presentation. He also says, you're still the most handsome field herper too, except for Roy. Harvey has a special place in his heart for Roy. And Jordan says, you're bringing a tear to my eye. Pops. He calls you Pops.
Oh, thanks, Harvey. I appreciate that. And I got to get up there to do your meeting when things are all back to normal, as long as you guys are still going too. So I was supposed to do a presentation for Harvey's group right as the pandemic got in the full swing, and that got canceled.
Yeah, we kind of haven't been meeting yet. Just kind of waiting to get back into it. So hopefully some point in the next couple of months.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm willing. Whenever we're back to normal, just let me know when you're ready to go.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll do one of these anyway at some point, but it'd be great to get you back in person.
Yeah, for sure. I had a blast last time. I love getting in front of people. It's sad because I look forward to this and hanging out with Jesse and everybody after the show and shaking hands, and that's a thing of the past. So what can you do?
Yeah, Jesse has sweaty hands though, so it's tough to grab those clammy paws, Yeah.
Hey, and out here in farm country, we work for a living. I don't know what to tell you, Harvey.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me, guys. It was pretty cool. So was good to connect this way, even if we can't connect any other ways. And
Yeah,
so-
guys, I feel like we have people here from at least like half a dozen different states. So thanks everyone. Just off the top of my head, I know New Jersey, New York, Maryland, Pennsylvania, New Mexico, Ohio. So thanks everyone for tuning in, especially all you out-of-state people. It's really awesome having a great audience, a kind of diverse, geographically diverse audience. Illinois for Jordan currently. Harvey is it coming, calling in from the state of confusion, I believe.
Well, I feel that the this Zoom presentation works pretty well for all the great pictures that you have, Bob, in that we can see them very clearly on our computer screens.
Yeah.
Whereas like on a projector in a well-lit room, sometimes you can't see the stuff as well as maybe you would like.
Yeah, that is one upside. That's for sure. So yeah, I think this went pretty smooth.
Yeah, it was great.
I had a good time. I know I was stressing about, like, I've never screen shared on Zoom. Like, it's the easiest thing in the world, but I was like, oh my God, I'm going to mess something up. So
I went without a hitch.
yeah, cool.
Yeah, very good. Hey, well, thanks so much everyone for being here. Like I said, the Herp Club's not going to meet in December, so enjoy your Christmas and your Kwanzaa and your Hanukkah and your solstice and all the other different holidays. And we look forward to meeting again with you in 2021. Hopefully we'll have more information on guidance in the coming time. So if you want to go to lancasterherp.org, you can sign up to get on our email list, and Greg will keep you updated. And he does these really cool little digital sketches as well. So you can, see like an alligator with a Santa hat on or something, or maybe it'll be like a gharial that is wearing a mask, or a special gharial mask. He'll come up with something creative. So it's worth it for Greg's drawings alone to sign up for our email list, and we'll keep you updated with the next meetings that are coming up. But one more time, the Etsy link for Bob is etsy.com/shop/fascinature. And if you're not sure about any of that, just look up Bob Ferguson on Facebook. Just copy it right now from the chat if you're there. Greg just posted the link again, and you can order direct from that shop, or I just ordered 20 of them during the presentation tonight, and that's something that we're giving out to friends. And think about all the people that are just, you don't even know what to get them, or maybe like you're mad at them because they don't wear their mask enough, or they wear their mask too much, or some reason that you're mad at someone in 2020. You can make up with them by sending them a calendar, and then it will be perfect again.
I need you for the marketing department.
Yep. I'm your guy. So all right,
hey, I just wanted to, this is Josh here in New Mexico. I just want to say thanks for letting me join in here. Like I said, I've been following Bob on Facebook for years, and it's kind of cool to see him actually do a presentation. I also want to let you know I'm president of the New Mexico Herpetological Society, and beginning of December, we're doing a big Zoom activity thing. We'll be getting a virtual tour of the Chiricahua Desert Museum if anyone's interested in that. So you can hit our website, nmherpsociety.org.
Is that right on the border? But is that like rodeo or rodeo or?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, I've been there. That place is amazing. I'd love it. Yeah, talk to me after this. I'd like to be there. We got a behind the scenes look there. It was incredible.
That sounds really good, Josh. If you could send us just a reminder of that to the info@lancasterherp.org, we would love to let our members know about that, especially.
Send information about that.
Will do.
You guys will love it. If you've never been there, it's insane. It's so cool.
It's cool. And the guy, it's Bob Ashley who owns it, who's doing the tour. So, and he's open to Q&A. So he'll probably take us into some of the back collection and stuff. I mean, he has pretty much every montane rattlesnake you can think of. It's an amazing collection.
Could you type in your Herp Club's website in the chat box for us?
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Josh. I appreciate it.
That sounds very cool. Thanks.
Well, while the crowd's thinning out, I'm just gonna chip in and say thanks for the great presentation, Bob. This is Alex from from Chester County.
Hey, Alex. Yo, if for everybody who's left here, Alex is a hard ass working herper. He works his butt off. When did you find me? Maybe the spring or something. And like, don't take this the wrong way, but like a lot of people come to me asking for advice, and I'm always kind of weary. Like Alex proved to be like the hardest herper. I'm like he works circles around what I do. Like he's up and coming, and he's finding good stuff, and he's gonna be a big personality in this community. He refuses to take a spot. I'm like, all season long, he worked his butt off for Smooth Greens, and he put in all the work. I saw all the miles he put in. I'm just like, listen, Alex, why don't you just take a spot? Like, I feel like you deserve it now. And he's like, no, I just want to keep trying these spots. Like, that's awesome. Like, it was a pleasure to meet you, dude. It really was. Like, it's rare that you find somebody that wants to work that hard. Like, a lot of people just want to, and don't get me wrong, if I'm going out of town, yeah, please show me all the snakes you can show me in 24 hours. But like that, you put all that work in was incredible.
Yeah,
I
thanks.
just want to second
Means
that.
a lot.
Alex kicks ass.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry I didn't have any nice questions or anything, but it was a great presentation. You covered a lot, and yeah, I'm just grateful that you came out and did this.
Appreciate it, man. Good to
Yep.
meet you. We'll have to get in the field next year.
Yep, sounds good.
You too, Jordan.
Jordan, you're
muted.
muted. You're muted, man.
Jordan, you're muted.
Oh shit. Am I good
Oh,
now?
You're
Yeah, you're
good
good.
now. Wait, you are muted again.
What is-
You just muted yourself again, it looks like.
Jordan's much better at hog noses than Zoom meetings.
Aren't we
I'm
all?
not even good at hog noses, man. That's all Will, but
Will's so Alex reminds me a lot of Will. Like those are the two young guys that I think, and we don't talk as much, so maybe you work as hard, so don't take offense. But like those two guys I know well work their asses off. It's like
no, I don't work. They just land in my lap.
Will goes out and like lays all these board lines and then tells me about them. I'm like, dude, stop telling me about your spots. I feel guilty, like. Well, he just wants me to check them because he can't get to them that often. And I'm like, all right, man.
I know it's like picking up $20 bills. You're like, oh, sure, I'll pick up a $20 bill.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll definitely. Jordan, where are you at right now?
I'm in Chicago right now. I'm moving out to Kansas City for work.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
I was gonna say maybe we should get out in the field, but like I'll let you figure out Kansas City area for a little while, and then I'll come out.
yeah. All right. Good idea. I came out back in May and went all over Kansas and found pretty
Oh
much.
wait, you were in Kansas, so you're pretty close
Yeah.
to the Flint Hills, then, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
if
right,
you want
cool.
to find milks, I'll get you on them, man. They're pretty easy.
I was literally just looking at Google Satellite today at the Flint Hills, and I was just looking at all the rocks and like, man, this is
Yeah.
incredible. I got to get out there someday.
You got it. Like the thing about Google Maps though is it's really misleading out there because a lot of the rock is actually exposed bedrock, so you can't flip it. So that's like the advantage of road cuts is it's all eroded, so it's easy to flip.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, dude, if I can get out there, what is it, like May?
Yeah, May.
Yeah. Yeah,
Depending on
me
spring.
and the boys have been talking about it for years. I think it has to happen soon.
Yeah, definitely.
You get speckled kings there?
Yeah.
Oh, God. Just to have, yeah, that's a dream.
Yeah, the specs out there. I don't know. Like some people really don't like speckled kings. I don't know why. Like they really like Louisiana specs, and not really Kansas specs. But in my opinion, the Kansas specs have more of a pattern to them.
Yeah. Hey, I'll take whatever I can get. So
Yeah.
and the milk's out there incredible.
Definitely, yeah. I love the Suspilla there. Like Illinois and Missouri red milks, honestly, are better looking, but you can't beat the quantity in Kansas, man.
Yeah,
It's-
and I've seen like Noah's videos and stuff, and like when he finds 20 milks in a day, and they all look different. I mean, that
Yeah.
I live, you know, they all look a little different. So I don't care. I just want to see the variety.
Yeah.
And for Josh too, like, I know we've probably once or twice talked about, yeah, whenever I'm out there, blah, blah, blah. I'm buying my business and my life is going to change in a year. And in 2022, I am going to be traveling the country to visit reps and sales reps. And you can be for sure I'm going to tack on a day or two on all these trips. So I have a rep in New Mexico I need to visit, and I will be giving you a ring come a year and a half from now. So.
Wait, Bob, you're saying you're buying out the family business then?
Yeah.
Oh, that's exciting.
It is, because I really am going to look into that whole mixing business and pleasure thing. Like I to grow the business, I have to go visit these reps. So like birding example, I always use this example. I wanted to get to Saxon Bog, which is a great place for great gray owls up in Minnesota. Nobody's going to Minnesota in February unless you're going for the owls. So like I'll visit my Minneapolis rep, make it a long weekend, and go get the owls. I plan on doing that everywhere, everywhere I got to go to visit somebody for business, I'll tack a few days on and find stuff.
That's smart.
I'll meet a lot of people I've wanted to meet for a long time. I'll find a lot of herbs,
That's cool. So I guess could I come with you, be your marketing guy?
Yeah. Hey, you proved yourself tonight. We're going to check the Etsy sales and then we'll see.
Yeah. I just PayPal'd you directly. You can still just PayPal you directly, right?
Yeah, for sure. I'd rather it be that way, but like for this stuff, like I actually made the Etsy shop because I flew down to Georgia to Herp with Noah Fields. Do you know who he is? I know some he's had.
You were telling me he has a full-time YouTube gig.
Yeah, he's a full-time YouTuber. He's like cracked the code, and he, as of today, had 121,000 subscribers on YouTube. So now his job is to make YouTube videos. He doesn't have to work anymore. And he agreed to promote the calendars in a video. So I'm like, well, you can't be telling people to PayPal or Venmo me or whatever. So let me make the Etsy shop.
Right.
So I made the Etsy shop and I gave him Noah 5 instead of Lank 5 as a coupon. So that way I can track who's getting these sales and see like what actually works better than the other, And he put me into one.
Helpful because for me, it was really helpful to navigate the different calendars, to view the different calendars. So what I did was I actually looked at the Etsy thing, and then before I paid, I was like, oh, on Etsy, you probably gotta eat the credit card fees or the Etsy fees or the sales tax or whatever. So it's like I actually use Etsy to shop, but then instead of buying on Etsy, I just PayPal'd you.
Yeah, and it comes to like 10%, which sucks because it takes money out of the donation. But like in Noah's case, it's like calendars I never would have sold anyway. So
yeah, makes sense. Money. Yeah, 10% of nothing is better than 0% of something.
Yeah,
or something like that.
Something like that. I'm good to go. You guys good? Anybody else?
Right. I'm good. It was excellent. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I wish I could have thanked everybody for coming. I didn't know who was still on at the end, who lasted, but.
Yeah, nice seeing you, Bob.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Yeah, and Josh and Jordan, Alex, all you guys, it's awesome whenever you guys can tune in. It's really great seeing you. So, I mean, it'll probably be January before we have another one. So maybe the next one we'll have to see. We'll be at the New Mexico one in December. But
yeah, Josh, I'll look in. If you have information about the event that you're doing, you could send it to the info at Herp thing. I mean, I'll look into it, what you have on your website and stuff, and we'll try to send out an email to our group about that to try to get some people from here to attend.
Yeah, that sounds good. I'll send you some information. Still haven't made flyers and stuff for it yet, but I'll send you flyers and anything else.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Hey, Alex, I saw you still want the T-shirt.
Yeah.
I made a cooler one that I thought with the world on fire that said apathy is the fuel. Everybody was like, oh, we want that. But I went to these T-shirt people and it's like the minimums are like 20. I'm not going to sell 20, like not at this point. But I hope to actually start putting out some merchandise eventually. I'm small pigeons right now for as far as that goes. So, but yeah, if you want one of these, I'll order 6 of them and send you one. So.
Yeah, I'm sure people would totally buy the t-shirts. I was thinking people in my generation, like maybe we don't use calendars so much because we're always on phones and everything, but t-shirts are always something everybody wants. So
yeah, well, I took your donation. You're going to be in the next raffle. You have 8 entries in there, so you might win. And like I tell people like that just want to donate money, I'm like, I'm going to put you in that raffle anyway. If you don't want the picture, you can give it away, or you can say just donate all the money. But if you want the picture, great, because I love seeing them hang on people's walls. So, but with a lot of field herpers are like, well, I need Bob's picture for. I could just frame my own, you know. So.
Yeah, but they don't. You do it. So.
Bob, do you have any of your like pictures? Do you have like any books like published of your photography work or anything?
No, for years I have a field guide for New Jersey done, halfway done, that I gotta find the time to finish, and I'm not prioritizing it. But there's a real hole in the market for New Jersey field guides. There isn't one. So I've been writing it slowly, and I've talked to some printers, and actually Chad Arment, who was in here earlier, he has Coach Whip Publications, and he's talked to me a little bit about it. So that might be a thing down the line if I could ever prioritize it.
Yeah, I mean, writing anything takes a lot of time.
Field guides are weird because like I had to figure out all the rules with like what I was allowed to use. You know, I don't know. It was an area that I wasn't accustomed to. So
yeah.
But that's one of my dreams. Well, I have 2 dreams in life. 2 dreams in herping life. One is to have a species named after me, and one is to write a field guide. So the species thing's actually really close. I'll come out with that in a few months, hopefully.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, I got last day archery in Pennsylvania tomorrow, so I got to go.
I'm going to sign out too. I'm going to go eat some dinner.
All right. Thank you so much,
guys.
everybody.
2021.
Good
talking to you, Bob.
Have good holidays, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Night, guys.
Good night.